Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens with me, Parikshit Luthra. These are the top global headlines we're tracking. Several people dead in Switzerland after an explosion sparks fire at a ski resort on New Year's Eve. Around 100 people were at a bar during the explosion. Police say no explosive device was found and there is no suggestion this was a terrorist attack. Months after emerging victorious in an election that made headlines, Zohran Mamdani takes oath as the mayor of New York in a subway station. The 34-year-old, a left-leaning Democrat, makes history as the city's first Muslim mayor. He's also the youngest person to hold the high-profile office in more than a century. China imposes 13% sales tax on contraceptives from today, while childcare services are made tax-free, a move aimed at boosting China's falling birth rate. Marriage-related services and elderly care will also be exempt from value-added tax. In today's edition of Global Lens, we look at what India's foreign policy playbook could look like in 2026. It is believed New Delhi is likely to stick with its long-standing diversification strategy, one it believes paid off in 2025. Call it non-alignment, multi-alignment, or omnidirectional engagement. Different names, same idea. Be friends with many, aligned with none. But diversification is high maintenance. Scholars warn that if mismanaged, it could leave India pleasing no one and annoying everyone. The toughest tests lie closer home: fragile ties with China, tense relations with Pakistan, rising anti-India rhetoric in Bangladesh, and challenges in Nepal. Neighborhood first may now require a sharper security-first approach. None of this weakens India's global ambitions to champion the global south, witnessing a renewed push in 2026. Beyond US or say policies and possible shocks from Trump-era decisions, India will need to stay alert. Implementing deals inked with the UK, Oman and New Zealand in 2025 will be crucial. But even more important will be cracking agreements with the United States, the European Union and Chile. Some talks may be tough, with decisions even tougher, which brings us to the big question: will taking tough decisions push India to choose sides, ending its long-standing non-alignment strategy? Joining us now to take this ahead is a stellar panel. We're joined by former Indian ambassador to China, Ashok Kantha, former diplomat Rajiv Bhatia. He's also a distinguished fellow at the Foreign Studies program at Gateway House. Also on the show with us is former Indian ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. Ambassador Bhatia, let me begin with you. We've grappled with trade uncertainty for the whole of 2025 because of the United States. How can India end the impact of this uncertainty because of these talks with the United States on Indian businesses? Because we've negotiated for 1 year, we don't have a deal. We can't do anything more. We've given them our proposal. Trump has to sign on it. It remains uncertain. We need to move on.
Thank you very much for coming right to the central issue. The trade deal is, in my view, no longer about trade. It is about certain basic political questions that characterize the relationship, the changing equation between Delhi and Washington. It has to be addressed and resolved at the political level. I think some efforts already are underfoot for that. But I think in terms of appreciating India's position in the world, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, in Asia, I think that is something that Washington has to show a greater understanding for. Also, I think it certainly relates to India's role in South Asia and India-Pakistan relations as well, because the US has discovered some new uses of Pakistan with reference to West Asia and the rest of it. So fundamentally, I would say the issue is not any longer trade. It is fundamentally political and security related overall positioning of India in the Indo-Pacific view. And in that sense, the only additional point I can make it, in 2026, one principal triangular relationship that would matter a great deal, that would be US, China, and India. If we can decipher that well, I think Delhi and Washington would be able to handle and address their relationship with great deal of maturity and sensitivity.
Right. That indeed is an important point, Ambassador. Let me take that forward with Ambassador Sajjanhar at this point. Ambassador Sajjanhar, what's your view on how to manage the relationship with Donald Trump in 2026? He's fighting his own political troubles back home. We've got the November midterms, which will be crucial in deciding how Trump approaches his economic policies and allies as well. But how do you manage this, President, even if we do strike a trade deal, and frankly, we have no knowledge whether it will even happen or not. Even if we do, Trump will ask for something more 2 months later. That will never stop for the next 3 years. How do we manage Trump in 2026?
Yeah, thank you very much, Parikshit, for having me on your show. I think we have to really take it forward step by step. In my view, India has handled Mr. Trump very well so far. You know, when we had these all these invectives and rather intemperate language being fired at us from the Trump administration, we maintained our calm. We did not respond in similar measure. We have sort of been focusing on having substantive trade negotiations with the United States, and we have told them where our red lines exist. We have given them what we possibly could. So I think it is the United States which has to recognize, which has to see that this is all that India can do. In the meanwhile, I think I would also underscore the fact, Parikshit, that they have started on a process of diversification about which you spoke. That we have signed these FTAs with the United Kingdom, with New Zealand, with Oman, also with EFTA. Because that four-member grouping is also an important one. And then, of course, we are looking at the European Union, Chile, etc., etc. So I think this diversification is important. It will definitely help. I'm not trying to suggest that it is, it in any way could substitute in the short term as far as the United States is concerned. But the point I want to make is that trade being where it is, let us see what are the areas in which we can continue to work together with the United States. You would have seen that other issues like defense, extension of the defense agreement for 10 years, as far as the exercises, defense exercises, Yuddhabhyas in Alaska, here, there, etc., is concerned. As far as Indo-Pacific is concerned, I think all those areas we see that how we can proceed forward. The last point I'll make here is that by Mr. Trump's actions, the trust between the two countries has been severely eroded, and we have to see how we can continue with this interdependence with much lesser trust, so that we don't put all our eggs in one basket.
All right. Ambassador Kantha, Sergio Gore, the US ambassador to India, will be coming to formally take over this month. Do you think that could turn things around between India and US if we manage Sergio Gore well?
It's good to have a US ambassador in New Delhi finally, 1 year, almost a year after the new administration took over. But I think let's be clear about the fact that there are certain fundamental challenges we are confronting today. This is not a question of Mr. Gore being here and able to sort our problems out. There has been a fundamental shift in US foreign policy, number one. Two, its stance towards Indo-Pacific. Three, stance towards India. Four, stance towards China. All this put together has created a very ticklish, difficult situation for us. We are trying to navigate, these troubled waters, so to say. But it's not something which, Ambassador Gore being here is going to resolve. There is I believe, need to revisit, to what how do we engage with USA in strategic terms. Need for a dialogue, because kind of signals we received from them over last 1 year or so have been quite negative, and also need to understand what is nature of a relationship which is evolving between USA and China. Because if you look at national security strategy, which came out on for December, uh, USA is moving towards a different stance vis-a-vis China, not looking at it so much as a strategic challenge, but more of an economic challenge. I believe there is still lack of clarity, but that
Right.
fact combined with reduced salience of India in USA's strategy, and more specifically its Indo-Pacific strategy, creates a difficult situation for us.
Okay. Now I'm going to shift focus to China. And Ambassador Kantha, I'll begin with you because you've served as an ambassador to China. Let me begin with a tweet of the Chinese embassy spokesperson in New Delhi. She has gone on to say, delighted to know that India is poised to surpass Japan to become the world's fourth largest economy. India's rise shows that true strength comes from facing history honestly, learning from it, and taking responsibility for the future. China, especially the Chinese ambassador, had extended an olive branch to India last year as well, saying that we should stand up to the bully, Donald Trump. How do you see this tweet now at the beginning of the year?
Parikshit, this tweet is not really an olive branch to India, but it's a swipe at Japan. You're aware of what is happening in China-Japan relations over the last few weeks, since Japanese Prime Minister made certain comments about Taiwan. The Chinese response, both the diplomatic response and in terms of punitive actions taken by China against Japan, has been quite harsh, to say the least. This is really, they are trying to sort of referring to history factor, facing up to history. It's an indirect attack on Japan, rather than sort of lauding the fact that India is overtaking Japan to emerge as the fourth largest economy in the world. I will point out that this also adds to complications in the current strategic situation we are faced with.
Right.
Uh, kind of messaging which is being done to Japan, a lack of tolerance on part of China to accept any divergence in views, it has its own lessons for us.
Absolutely. Let me go back to Ambassador Bhatia at this point. Ambassador Bhatia, Xi Jinping has said today that China has pledged itself to achieve the reunification of China and Taiwan, calling Beijing's long-held goal unstoppable. If China tries to invade Taiwan in 2026, what will be the consequences for India, according to you?
Well, that's a hard question, but it is obviously based on the assumption that the worst things can happen and they will happen. I think India's playbook has envisaged scenarios like this, and obviously, it would not be proper for me to reveal everything here, but I think we need to work on a more realistic situation. I think this business of China's invasion or attack on Taiwan has been talked about for many years. So the essential point is that the experts in China nevertheless agree that Chinese strategy is to secure its goals without firing a bullet, if that is possible. So that situation is there, but I would just like to take a minute to go back to what my dear colleague Ashok Kantha has said. I think for India, the most important thing is to see how, in the changing or changed US view, India could matter still a lot. And for that, I think there are really two possibilities. One is that we continue to try to persuade Washington that what the US administration did for the past 2 decades was valid, that India is a power that matters in the Indo Pacific for the US interest itself. Or alternatively, if we finally come to the conclusion that we have reached a stage where the US administration is not willing to buy that argument, then
Right.
India has to be ready with an alternative strategy, and perhaps we could talk about that strategy as well.
Okay, I'll just get in because I want to cover some other ground in some other regions. So I'll bring in Ambassador Sajjanhar. Ambassador Sajjanhar, India is set to host the BRICS summit this year. We have been managing our relationship with Russia well. We made sure that the message during President Putin's visit was clear that the focus of this relationship and this visit is making sure the economic ties grow. What is the message that India is likely to send out with the BRICS summit this year? And how do you think we can leverage these relationships to our advantage?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Parikshit. I think as far as BRICS is concerned, what India's stance has always been that we want that organization, that institution to be not an anti-Western organization, but a non-Western organization. So I think that is the sort of messaging that we will send. You know, what Mr. Trump has also been saying that, you know, BRICS is out for de-dollarization and that all the countries are rooting for it. There might be some countries like Russia, China, etc. But India has made its point very clear that again, we are not in the business of de-dollarization. We are going more in the direction of trading through national currencies. That is increasing, but otherwise we are very happy to have dollar as the international currency. So I think in that context, what the original thinking when BRICS was set up in 2001, when Jim O'Neill had come out with that idea, that basically it is the emerging economies which are wanting a better say as far as running of the global economic institutions is concerned. Of course, we have moved further beyond that because the whole idea of BRICS at that time was large territory, large population, large economies. Now, in the recent past, whatever we have added there, they do not fit any of this criteria. In fact, even South Africa does not fit this criteria. So we have to see how this is. But basically, I think as far as India's chairmanship next year is concerned, we see that how we bring the countries together, and India can really emerge again as a voice of the global South. You know, this is what we have been saying. This will be a grouping,
Right.
meaning you cannot really include China and Russia in the global South. But if you permit one last point, in terms of the discussion that you're having on China, I think basically what we really need to do is, I think, as Rajiv has said very clearly, bring it out to the United States that it is in its own interest. If it wants technological dominance uh, globally, then it needs India's talent, whatever is happening there that, under the MAGA this thing. And the second point is that if we have to sort of,
Right.
stand up to anyone, any of the countries, then to grow economically. So our best foreign policy, as it has been said, is 8 to
Okay.
10% economic growth. So that is where we need to go.
Right. Ambassador Kantha, managing the relationship with China in 2026 at a time when we have very difficult relationships with Pakistan, and also we're trying to mend ties with Bangladesh. How do you see the relationship with China on both these fronts?
Uh, let's first, begin with bilateral relations with China because that's where we need to focus on. Uh, I think approach we have adopted to move towards a step-by-step improvement of relations. A cautious, calibrated approach, I think, is just right. Uh, there are, in fact, a whole lot of complications in our relations with China, and signals we are getting from our Chinese interlocutors, at least in track two discussions, is that they believe we are seeking better relations with China because we are under stress in our relations with USA. So proceeding from a place of weakness is never the best place to do business with China. So we have to be careful how we develop our relations with China. Coming to Pakistan and Bangladesh and China's role there, frankly, when it comes to China-Pakistan relations, it's a very strong strategic nexus, which was on full display during Operation Sindoor, when China provided operational support amounting to battlefield collusion with Pakistan. Bangladesh is not in the same category, but China has been expanding its footprint there. I don't think we can do much to prevent that, except managing our relations with Bangladesh properly. We are taking some initiatives. The fact that EM was in Dhaka, I think that was very timely move. With Pakistan, honestly, I don't see anywhere of eroding China-Pakistan nexus, which has been extremely durable and extremely negative from our point of view.
Right. All right. We've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us with what could be possibly India's foreign policy playbook. But one thing which is very clear from our veteran diplomats, that India somehow needs to focus on relationships with both US and China to stabilize its global relations, economic relations, and succeed in its economic goals as well for 2026. Because stability on the border, stability on the foreign policy front is very important for economic growth as well. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sajjanhar, Ambassador Bhatia, and Ambassador Kantha for joining us. Moving on, India will witness several high-profile visits in 2026, starting with the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's visit in January, followed by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa, who will be the chief guests at the Republic Day celebrations. Then comes the big AI summit, which India is set to host in the third week of February. The summit is expected to attract more than 100 global CEOs and around 15 heads of state. Later in the year, India will also host the 18th BRICS Summit and the India-Africa Summit. Time for a short break, but don't go anywhere. We bring you some more global headlines on the other side. Welcome back to Global Lens. 2026 is going to be a crucial year with key geopolitical regions heading to polls. That is over 40 countries representing 1.6 billion people. Some noteworthy elections include Bangladesh, which will hold its first national election in February following Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's ouster. Nepal heads to the polls in March after last year's Gen Z led uprising in Europe. Hungary's parliamentary elections will be closely watched as they decide the political fate of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who shares close ties with Russia. The outcome is also expected to shape the future of Russia-EU relations. Countries affected by the Iran-Israel conflict, including Libya and Lebanon, are also set to hold national polls. Turning to active geopolitical flashpoints, Israel and Russia, both in the midst of ongoing conflicts, will also head to polls. Israel's October vote will be decisive for Tel Aviv's longest-serving Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, while Russian elections are often dismissed by critics as lacking genuine competition. And finally, Israel's strongest ally, the United States, will also see midterm elections. These elections will decide control of the US Congress and determine the amount of influence President Donald Trump will have for the remainder of his term, which ends in 3 years. Months after emerging victorious in an election that made headlines, Zohran Mamdani has taken oath as the mayor of New York in a subway station. The 34-year-old, a left-leaning Democrat, made history as the city's first Muslim mayor. He's also the youngest person to hold the high-profile office in more than a century. Dozens of people have been killed and many injured after a fire ripped through a ski resort in Switzerland. More than 100 people were ringing in the new year when an explosion sparked a fire. Police say they did not find any explosive device, and there is no suggestion that this was a terror attack. Initial reports blamed fireworks or pyrotechnics as the cause for the fire, but the police did not confirm this. People from different nationalities were inside the resort during the fire. Chinese President Xi Jinping has vowed to reunite Beijing and Taiwan while giving the New Year speech. He said Chinese on both sides of the Taiwan Strait share a bond of blood and kinship. He added the reunion between the two is unstoppable. This statement comes hours after China ended its military drills around Taiwan. That's a wrap on another edition of Global Lens. We leave you with the visuals of New Year celebrations from across the world. Goodbye and many thanks for watching.